Good afternoon, all. CamelbackTrading.org coming to you this Wednesday afternoon, November 1st. We're looking at window traders market profile of the ES and the NQ. So very, very positive day for the bulls after Jay Powell speaks and after they don't raise rates. The market continues what it was doing, which was attempting to go up. Incredibly, we gapped higher today, ES and NQ, and we held it. Barely, but we held it. 2 ticks in ES, NQ was about 10 points. Righty never gapped higher. Righty ends with a poor low, a 9-wide point of control, and they went out with a price probe. They're still in a 6-day balance. Okay, I'm using last Thursday's high as the top of that balance. NQ goes out with 2 sets of single prints for a double distribution day up and a price probe. A 10-wide, no, I'm in bigger increments. I think only 9. A 9-wide POC and an afternoon pullback in K. Okay? And we go out with 1 set of single prints, double distribution day, a 9-wide point of control at I's high. I'm not using K's low, too close to the day's low, and a gap. Volume decent. We're at 95 million, so we're going to do over 100 with the after hours. Look, we knew this was short covering and momentum buying, right? What was impressive was J. Perry, when they came out with the announcement, now look, most people were expecting nothing, but that doesn't mean anything. The ALGO still usually react. J. Perry didn't do much. K was the one that got the movement and a really heavy volume. I did think we would take out, when K came down and finally got the opening, I thought there'd be more stops below GH, I, and J's low. And I thought that might just set it off where you get the gap. I would have looked for a long there because we had the wide POC and they weren't getting much. Didn't happen, didn't do anything. The only other trade I would have taken, and I got caught asleep, was when we pushed up to around the 64 level in L, SPY got right to the 200-day moving average. And I'd said to the room, that's going to be around 64 in NQ. Immediately came off 8 points. And in the ES, I said the next big target is 750, which is Wednesday's high. I might short that one. They happened at the same time. I was asleep on both of them. Didn't do it. Went from 750 down to, I don't know. Came in pretty good, 20 points at least. So, and then the second time up there, that's not a trade for me. That's a first time touch at the 200 and at Wednesday's high. So I kind of got caught asleep there. So I had a decent morning, nothing huge. Traded both of these. I was long in ES to get the overnight high, which worked out. NQ, I was long on a pullback in B period. Once they got their overnight high and they in A, and then they were pulling back, I did well on longs there. ES, I took a long against the opening in B period. When it pushed back, that worked out nicely as it held and went right back up. NQ, I took a long to go fill the single prints from last Wednesday in E period. That worked out. And then in F, I took a long in ES. It says when we fill the single prints. I thought it was a nice afternoon, for not a big one, thought it would be an afternoon pullback. Took a long on that one also. And in NQ, it was E down here when they filled the single prints. I thought that was a good risk-reward trade because the reason that was everything was in favor of the bulls. I didn't expect them to hold the trend day up prior to the Fed. Well, ES didn't fill theirs, okay, until later in F. So once they did it, though, I didn't think the market was bad. That's why I took the long in F and ES and the long in ES and NQ at E's low. And again, after 2, I rarely trade, but that was one trade I would have looked for in both ES and NQ on that short. As far as destinations now, 423.50 in SPY, and then the weekly high, that's the big one next, 424.82 on the upside. Downside is our single prints, 422.50 to 421.90, 60 cents. 9-wide pocket, 420.26, and today's low, 418.65, and filling the gap at 418.53. Very small 12-point gap. Now, another thing I just want to mention, because we mentioned the POC. Point and control is 9 wide at eyes high. We couldn't raise it anymore. That's a nuance sometimes. No matter how high we went, we could have gone up another $1,000. Pot's not being raised. That's a nuance that not to ignore going forward, because odds are you might go back and test that at some point. Okay? I'm not saying tomorrow or Friday, but just keep that in mind. As far as ES's numbers, the downside is single prints 54.25 to 48.50. 32 is 9 wide, and today's low is 15.50 and filling the gap at 15, 2 ticks. Upside is 64.75, and then a real important one, last week's high of 83.50. And why is that important? Because that would put them weekly back to balance, right? So looking at the charts now, here's our weekly. It's an inside week after 3 days. And if we take out last week's high, we're back to balance. And more importantly, we're trying to get back into this no man's land area again, right? So even though they pushed down pretty good, right? One last week, and so far this week they were in there. We always say 1 day, 1 week doesn't make a market. We'll see. Are the bulls trying to climb back out and get into this range at least? They're trying, but the next big step would be to take out the weekly high to come back into a balance. Okay? And on the daily, we are up. We're one time framing up 3 days. We bumped our head on the 200. I don't care we close below it. 200 isn't the big factor to me. The weekly high is. We have spent 6 days below the 200, which is the most we've spent since the middle of March of this year. But you can see all these averages are coming, kind of converging and getting closer together here. There's not a big difference between them anymore, right? In fact, it's a $10 difference between the 200 and the 50. So, is there still a possibility of a Santa Claus rally? Well, first things first. Take out a weekly high. Number 2, at least stay in this no man's land for a while, don't get sucked back into this balance. And then number 3 eventually would be to come back into above that 430 level and here to get back into this balance. So we'll see. Everything's still on the table. We have Apple tomorrow night, and then you have non-farm payroll Friday morning. Great educational day in the room today. Even though we're not placing a lot of trades, we are certainly keeping the room up to date on what's happening, why it's happening, and what we're looking for. Enjoy your evening. Thanks for the likes and subscribing to this channel, and we'll speak prior to the opening tomorrow.